Welcome, everyone. Okay, I'll have to stand up so I'm not talking, you can't see me at all. It has been a while since we've all been here. The last time we were here was in November. We had no December thanks to Mother Nature, so hopefully everyone was safe, had a great Christmas and great New Year. But now that the holidays are over, the snow is hopefully over for a while, the cold is over for a little while, we're back and ready for business again. So what I want to do is, given the fact that we had weather-related events happening, it's caused the administrative team to push back their schedule for when things were due because they've been here to be able to get everything together. So first of all, what I want to do is pass out to each of you an updated agenda, meeting agenda, and I'll go over that. We are doing two things. We are, number one, videotaping these meetings so people are able to watch them after the fact. And we are also audio taping as well. And the reason why is, and I think most of you heard, when I tried to take notes and speak at the last meeting, it didn't work so well. So there you go. So it'll be transcribed and then we can put the minutes up there as well. There you go. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, so let's review this. This you had seen before. The big change is going to be under the presentation calendar, so I did want to review this. But just notes for anyone who is going to comment during this. For the tape recorder to pick everyone up, I know there will be comments as we go along tonight and also with the presentation. What we need you to do is, if you can give your name when saying it. Yes, we all know you, but when Barb is transcribing the minutes, she's not going to know who's who. So if you can just say, you know, this is Tom, my question is, that's one. And number two, if you cannot speak over each other, because otherwise she won't be able to tell what's being said at all. Okay? She asked me to pass it along. Okay, so if we take a look at the presentation calendar, so we are up to January 15th. Today we are having the budget presentation for transportation. We are also having a background presentation for athletics. It is not on the schedule as it's not the official athletics budget, but it's an athletics background. Sorry. Oh, no problem. On February 12th, now please look at your calendars, make sure you're checking all these dates because it said some had to change. So please review your calendars. February 12th, I know that's a new date. It's the last time those were rough estimates. These are actual dates. February 12th, we're going to have a packed night. We're going to talk about buildings and grounds, or the buildings. So the high school, elementary, GLP, the superintendent budget, finance department budget, and curriculum and instruction budget. That is a lot in 1 hour. When we talk about this, this is more the supplies, materials, that sort of thing. It's not the staffing. What they will talk about there, not the hardline dollars for staffing, but if they have staffing requests and changes for next year, they will talk to you about the staffing requests. We'll not have the dollars attached to them. We'll do that at a later date. But it's a chance for you to hear for each building or department if there are going to be any changes. 226, that is a community forum. If you take a look at that at a 6 p.m. start time, it's just a little bit later. With the community forum, we'll have our initial meeting first, and then community forum where people are able to speak afterwards. But the initial meeting first, that will start at 6, we will cover in that roughly first hour, it may take a little longer, buildings and grounds, athletics, technology, PPS or special ed, and then following that, and my guess is that will probably take a little bit more than an hour to go over that. It's a lot. Then the community forum for any questions, comments from the community. Okay. On 3.5, we'll actually begin the staffing presentations and what the staffing numbers are actually looking like. On 3.15, the second and final community forum. That one, we would have to pick a time. It's a Saturday. All those able to make it. If you're not, we do understand if you're not able to make it, we encourage everyone, if you're able to please try and attend. I think those are great. The community forums, a chance for the entire community. Obviously, having community members on here is wonderful, but it's still important to have the 2 community forums where people are able to voice their opinions. And that will be the draft of the expenditure budget. And then after we do that with the budget advisory team, then it opens up again for the community forum for comments. On 3/19, 4 days later, is our next budget advisory team meeting. On April 8th, which is earlier than we had planned, we're looking for the Board of Education to adopt the budget. The actual last date to adopt the budget is mid-April, but to make sure that we get it in on time, that there are no issues with that, so we get it to state ed, we're looking at the April 8th meeting date. And on 5/8, a public hearing on the budget. Questions on the calendar? Okay, that is my spiel, which I'm sure after last meeting, you heard more than enough from me at the last meeting. So today, as I said, without further ado, we've got the 2 presentations.
Could we just move the microphone closer to the
Oh, so the first presentation is going to be from Rose Hackathorn, Transportation Supervisor. She's going to give us 2 different parts of the presentation. The first is going to be on the fleet. The second part is going to be the budget part of it. So I may interject at certain times. Again, any comments with the budget, if there are questions she's not able to answer right now, she will definitely get back to you. And then one thing is, I know we said last time, any questions, comments, if we can say them with a positive note, I'm sure everyone here is for the same purpose, but again, just laying down the ground rules for that as well. This is the first time, and I think I'm very proud to say for this district, and please correct me if I'm wrong, anyone, I think this is the first time we are having all of the department heads actually present their own budgets. So you're hearing firsthand, whereas you never had that chance to hear before. So you get to ask questions that really may have been asked before, but not directly. You may not have had the direct answer. So I think this is a definite benefit. And Rose is our first guinea pig to actually do this ever, so we appreciate you be willing to go first. So, no, she's actually done a wonderful job in preparing. So, I will turn it over to you, and I will get out of the way here.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Rose Hackathorn, Transportation Supervisor. And the first page is a review of our fleet that we have currently. The year in service is your left column.
Can everyone see that?
And the only vehicle in our fleet that is not assigned a route is the old station wagon, the 1993 station wagon, which the teachers sometimes use as transportation to different meetings. Right now, though, it has not been available this year because if I have a breakdown or something, like for special ed, I will have to use that for the children. And the children are my first priority, of course. Okay? As you look down through, you will see under the route number, that is the route that these vehicles are used for. The normal rotation column, that is when it should have been rotated out. As you can see, the first 9 we are way past due, and there are no value. When we get down to bus 185, there is no values left on our books, and we'll have another screen that will show that as well a little more. At this present time, we only have 8 vehicles that are under a warranty coverage. The rest of the fleet no longer has warranty coverage. Okay. The list of surplus vehicles is what was surplused at the last board meeting that we will be selling. And it will be going up for bid on Auctions International.
Rose, could you forward the slide?
Oh, I'm sorry. All right. Bus 63 and 64 are temporarily loaned to us, and at this time, they're sitting there. It will be spoken of at the board meeting later this evening as to the possibility of using them.
The one thing I would mention on this slide right here, if you go back one.
Sorry, I don't drive your mouse very well.
Okay, if you take a look at the column near the right that says normal rotation, you're going to see almost 7/8 of the way down from 2009 down, from bus number 198 on. We only have a handful of buses which we are still getting state aid on. Most of our buses are so old that we have run out of state aid. So normally you want to have a rotation where you're getting aid on most of your vehicles.
State aid is 5 years.
Yes,
Can we ask the questions as we go along, or do you want to wait for the end?
it's up to the presenter on what they feel more
Ask now.
comfortable.
What's the economics of repairs on these buses? Like, I mean, the ones that are
To
11
replace,
years old?
to replace the floor is $30,000.
And how often does that happen?
Right now, we have 2 of them that need it done.
We're budgeting to replace a couple floors next year.
I'm sorry, say it again.
We are budgeting to replace a couple floors next year. They're in need. At $30,000 a
No,
pop.
it's possible that some of the questions are going to be answered in her presentation.
I was going to say, before we actually get really off a track, so, and at the end, so that might work out better.
Okay.
Okay.
You're going to tell us what a new bus costs?
That's
Yes.
going to be part of the presentation, absolutely.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Okay. So, any other questions on these 2 screens before we go any farther? Okay. The next screen is a purchase plan. And for the 13-14, if we were allowed to purchase 2 full-size buses and 2 smaller buses, rather they be 16 or 20 passenger, the cost, the initial cost is listed there. Trade-in value or to sell them, we have found that normally selling them, you'll get more money than trading in, similar to your car probably. And figure safely $2,000 for a 66 passenger, anywhere from $800 to $1,000 maybe for a smaller vehicle is what we would get back when we sell it, and that goes back into the general fund, okay? Minus the state aid, the net cost, and then per unit, that's what we would be paying per vehicle.
Yes.
If you've got a $24,000 net cost for a vehicle, why would you pay $30,000 to replace a floor?
Exactly.
I mean, I've never heard of it.
I thought I heard you say we are.
Yeah. You said you're doing 2.
We have 2 that are needed to be done.
No, that's not the question is, are they being done, not whether they need to be done?
No, they're not being done yet,
Wait, I
no.
thought, Tom, I thought you said you were going to budget.
She's putting in the budget for
putting the
next
budget.
year plans
In
that.
case we have to.
In case we have to. We have to have the
We haven't
funds
been,
in the
we
budget to do that.
haven't been given permission to replace any vehicles yet. There's no permission yet from the board to purchase any vehicles.
Which we're going to address tonight.
We've never been turned down in a vote for new buses, have we?
Yeah,
We haven't purchased buses in 2 years.
I think it was 4 or 5 years ago.
Wait,
Mark did tell me that.
Holy cow, I'm having a hard time here. If you can buy a new bus for 24 grand and it's 30 grand to put a floor.
Well, first of all, we have to put out the whole 105,000 right away. So that state aid doesn't come back in the same year.
Oh,
It's the following year you would get the aid on it. So it's not a very simple, we're only putting out $24,000 in 1 year. So but what she's trying to do is to show you the economic realities, why it makes sense to be on a regular rotation of putting in buses.
And right now, with us being out of rotation, because New York State Department of Education, they're expecting that every 5 years that we're going to be needing more state aid to purchase buses. We're out of sync with that.
Okay, Mr. Shepherd?
Is it that we get the full state aid the next year, or is it spread over 5 years?
It's spread.
It's
So
spread
it's,
over 5 years.
yeah.
what is?
The state aid is spread over time.
5 years.
So what, you get like 20 grand a year? That's just a.
If you want to, yes, to make it real simple, yeah, basically if you did it that way, yeah. So it's not, you're going to get everything next year. That basically is what I'm trying to say. So next year with $105,000 per bus, you'll get aid beginning the following year because we have to put in showing that we purchased a bus and so on and so forth.
And what has occurred now, because we're so far out of sync with New York State Aid, they will now start looking at what our real needs are for state aid, and it might affect our ratio. Instead of, say, 76% of state aid coming back to us, they will reevaluate. When New York State looks at it and says, you know, they're not purchasing buses, they might not really need all this state, they reevaluate it.
Which means we'll get less. Instead of 76, we might get 66 or 55 or...
Or when they say they haven't been able to afford a bus, we got to up their percentage?
No, no, never go there.
The governor doesn't think like that. If you don't need the money, he's not going to give it to you.
Right.
And you got to show that you need the money.
Rose, what year were you here? Did you start here?
I started December of 2008.
Okay, so in 2000.
Makes sense.
What she's trying to highlight is we need...
Was defeated though, correct?
The first one was
And
defeated.
how many buses were we trying to purchase that year?
We were going for 3 that year.
Yes,
Is there a
Mr.
lower
Winnick.
need for the total number of buses because of the enrollments going down?
It's not that there's a lower need. We're saying that...
It's good. Transport, less students, less time, it's going to be less.
True, but again, our fleet is aging so that the need for buses is greater because it's older,
I
but,
understand that, but if you're going to replace buses, maybe you don't need to replace 5, you only need to
Correct.
replace 4 to bring yourself up to speed.
that's why
Right,
you're
and-
seeing
and-
less numbers here in the
Right,
rotation
and that's,
cycle.
But we're so far out, how we get so far out of rotation?
they used to purchase anywhere
opinion.
from 5 to 6 buses at a time back in the day. And then over time, with the diminishing population, student body needs, as well as we've changed the routing to fill the buses, the needs to purchase so many buses at one time diminished. So when I came in, instead of purchasing 4 to 6, it went down to 3 and then down to 2, and there's 3 years of my 5 years here, we have not purchased any buses. So that takes us out of rotation.
Later in your listing the buses, there's 4 buses a year coming up. And you've got about 8 buses that are sitting there in surplus that haven't even been sold out of the system. They're
They're,
no value.
right.
And
Well-
obviously, you're not running them because they're going to need something. And it's a question, are you getting them undercoated? So we don't need to put floors in.
The undercoating for the small ones, we've been doing right along,
Not the big ones?
not the big ones.
$30,000 a floor, $2,200 undercoated?
That is
Up
something we're
up
looking at.
until
Absolutely.
recently,
Yeah.
they were being
Agreed.
rotated out before they were 11, 12, 13 years old, and they didn't have that problem. So prior to 2 years ago, we did start doing some undercoating of the larger ones because we saw what was happening. But prior to that, no, it hadn't been done for the big ones.
State mandate in how long you can keep a bus?
No.
No, but there's a state guidance on life expectancy of a bus, not how long you can keep it. About 10 years.
10
that it should
years.
last.
And we're averaging 13 years?
Yeah, We're above the average,
Yeah.
yes.
And the
Now-
schedule that I put together, here you'll see is I'm trying to bring it back up into motion at approximately 3 to 4 buses a year. And that
Now-
would bring us back up on board where we need to be.
Let's do this, because I want to make sure we get through our whole presentation. So we've got about 40 minutes for Rose here, and then Marissa afterwards. So let's look through the rest of the presentation. Jot down your questions. At the end, what we can do is come back to all the questions. So I want to make sure we give her a chance to get through it, and then address your questions as well. If we don't get through all the questions, you can always email me the questions, and we'll respond to everything. Okay? Go ahead, Rose.
Okay? This is, I put together for you to see the estimated trade-in value of buses and how drastically, as they age, how it drops in value. Estimated mileage that a dealer is looking at is what they feel would be age appropriate for that vehicle. If you go back to your first page, I put the actual mileages up there for you to see, so you can have something to reference as to reality for us. And those mileages were put in as of Monday this week. The value on the books, up until 8 years, a bus has value to us. 9th year, there is no more value left on our books. And this is the actual amount of money that our school, this isn't fictitious, this isn't estimated, these are our actual numbers here in this column.
Well, the first page doesn't have it, your next page does, the mileage.
The value on the books?
No, the mileage, the actual mileage, which you're referencing. The
Right,
next page
yeah,
has it.
okay. Okay. And here's the mileage. So you can see in relationship to the year in service, the vehicle and the miles. As of Monday, these are the miles that were on these vehicles. The two minivans, 87 and 88, you'll see may not pass in February. We were already warned at the last DOT inspection. He did not like the condition of those bodies. Those are minivans. Those have been undercoated, but at this point, they are becoming so deteriorated. I met with my mechanics. They feel that they can do some work on them in-house and get them through the next inspection, which is real important because both of those are en routes. They do carry our special ed, and those are wonderful vans to drive. They're, other than the bodies decaying, they're very nice, and my mechanics assured me that they are going to be able to get those fixed to get us through this year, because I have no spares. If something happened to any of our special ed runs, just to give you a feel to what it would cost to go out to a contractor, say Carrier Coach, to go to Aspire, you might be looking at anywhere from $20,000 to $30,000, depending on the needs of the children.
Per child.
Per
child?
My contract, when I was at Springville last year, we had a vehicle going to Aspire with some students for Springville School, and it was $30,000.
It's per child, because sometimes that child's the only one on the bus.
Correct.
in that place.
And most of our special ed students,
Yep.
it's usually
And
a
they-
one-off.
And all of those usually need an attendant. So there's 2 adults, and sometimes child might need a nurse. So those are all added expenses into a contract. So if we're unable to facilitate transportation for our own children in-house, it could become very expensive. Okay. Okay. Just to give you a little insight of our service schedules, our maintenance program is every 45 days. That is parts, maintenance, lubes, they go through it completely, because if DOT shows up on our door, they have the right at any time to pull any vehicle for a spot inspection, and we want to be ready. We have gotten our percentage back up to 100%, and we really are working hard to keep it, okay? And I am very proud of our mechanics. They are doing an awesome job for us. They work really hard. Oil and filters for the large buses, 66 passengers, 10,000 miles. The short yellow ones and our minivans are 5,000 miles. They get oil and filter. New York State inspection, each vehicle is inspected every year 2 times. Every 6 months, that vehicle is seen by New York State DOT, and they are very thorough. Everything from cleanliness to the bearings to the tires, anything you can think of, they're looking at it. And I'm thankful that they are. They are paying very close attention to our fleet because of the decay of the floor sills, which is the metal framing underneath that everything rests upon, that our children ride upon. DOT is watching that very closely in our fleet, and our mechanics are doing some spot repairs to try to keep them up and going, and they've been under the direction of DOT, and DOT has been very pleased with it. But when those repairs, like the ones that we've had to surplus, They've already been repaired once, and now it's coming back up, and DOT is saying enough's enough. We need to make some changes, okay? Patty had asked about undercoating, and our dealers have given me an approximate cost this year was $2,200. It goes right in with the price of a new bus. It is, of course, state aided. And that $2,200 covers 10 years of Carwell coming on site and undercoating a bus. So it's a good deal. More and more schools are doing it.
Especially when you consider just what you said before, the replacement cost.
Okay. And Mr. Shepherd had asked me about propane buses in relationship to our diesel. Just some quick numbers. I've spoke to our dealers, and there is a difference. I know our government would like us to go as clean as possible, but with that also is expense. There are some grants available, but overall, these are the basic facts right now that we're dealing with. The mileages, I spoke to one of my dealers, actually he stopped by today, and I asked him about his propane buses, and he said that theirs are getting about 4.5 miles to the gallon. Our diesel buses, 95% of our fleet are Mercedes engines, and they're awesome. In 2010, the EPA said you need to run urea. Mercedes took a step back. We now run Cummins, which is another excellent engine and heavy duty, and we're very, very pleased with the performance. And in pulling our hills, we're getting 6 to 8 miles to a gallon, and we have some pretty steep hills. Some of our older vehicles, the newer the vehicle, the better the gas mileage, or excuse me, the fuel mileage. And so far, so good. We've been very, very pleased with these two types of engines. My inventory is down considerably from where it was, and I try hard to hold it there. If we start changing to other styles of engines, of course, we'll have to reflect that in the budget because the engine parts will be different.
If we were to switch to natural gas rather than propane, it's going to require a station, it's going to require lots of investment, but isn't that a capital investment the state would kick in on?
It would be a capital project that we would have to do, and yes, there would be state aid on
I
that.
have understood natural gas truck can save a third of the cost of operating that truck. Annually, the fuel costs are a third less because they get much better mileage, or the cost per of the fuel per gallon is much, it's not reflected there, there's no cost in
It
the
is.
fuel
It's
per
very
gallon. That's
dangerous.
really why the savings is for propane and
The fuel
natural
island's
gas.
like
And they
500,000.
save over 30%. So I was wondering. why-
And I believe, my knowledge is very limited when it comes to natural gas, but from my understanding with the presentation that we actually seen, there is a natural gas filling station over in North Collins, is it?
No, that's propane.
No, that's
It's propane,
propane.
propane.
But
Okay, thank you.
please,
When we went to the NISBA conference, though, Paul, you spent a lot of time talking
Yes.
to the people there.
Yes,
Yeah, he
and
was-
propane, at least how it was explained to me, was the same, that what you're saying is it's easier on the engine, and there's less repairs on it, on the engine. NYSERDA currently has a grant that will pay the difference between a diesel bus and a national, or a propane bus, the difference in the cost. And there right now is a subsidy on the propane where it is like $1 or something per gallon versus how much diesel is on state bid, which is like 3 something.
right, it's an incentive to get people to change, but that will go away as well,
But what I think we
like
can
we saw
actually,
with diesel.
I mean, this is very quick numbers because it's a topic that's coming up, and all districts are now starting to look at this. So this is a beginning conversation, I think what we're actually looking at here. The cost for the vehicles and the changeover and the implementation would be a little ways off just because of the cost associated with it. So I think perhaps we can have the two of you start the conversation and perhaps form a
Right.
committee on that.
Well, the other thing is having to do with your carbon footprint and carbon
Correct.
credits that are not down to public school levels yet, but I'm sure that as these, green incentives come along, there are going to be things having to do with the carbon footprint of schools and carbon footprints or carbon credits that you can actually literally sell to industry that need those credits.
And these engines are a gas engine. Even though they're propane fueled, they are a Ford gas engine.
Well, liquefied natural gas engines are now such that their diesel engines are converted to natural gas. It's a steam shell. Cost is basically a third less to operate for over-the-road truckers. The biggest hang-up for a school or anybody else is the filling station. And if we were to consolidate with other school systems,
Right.
or National Fuel might have one in Hamburg or something.
And that was a talk, is that.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's gonna be huge.
Right.
Dick, I have a question for you on that, because I know that some other school districts, when they started to become more progressive in changing their buses, found that their bays or their actual buildings couldn't accommodate the new buses and had to make some changes in it. Do you know when you start to speak about this, if that would or could be an issue?
Building, you don't store your buses in the building anyway.
No, when they're,
It's when they're being worked on.
right.
It's the bays.
Our building does not meet code, because that was one
Can't be much
thing,
to change it because
the height of the,
propane settles, and that may be the issue with propane. But natural gas.
It
such as
raises.
CNG, LNG float, so it's not, that may be the concern.
when Tom and I went to the meeting, to the class, that was one thing that they talked very strongly about, is having the proper building to accommodate the natural gas, because it's so much different, and there's definite specs that must be met in order to do that.
You're not talking about a storage building.
No, you're
Buses,
right.
they're
You're
all
right.
outside.
You're right.
And the difference is really the
Right.
one floats and one sinks.
But
And that was it, and they were talking.
It wasn't about
repair.
storage.
Yeah. so
No.
repair.
So the point, the building should not be a big issue.
Okay.
It's a ventilation system, so, but the big issue, all these, is the filling station. And, you know, if you
And it's
have
very
companies
expensive.
like Waste Management that have converted and spent millions of
Yes.
dollars to put a whole new fleet on it.
And they talked specifically about waste management too, and their conversion.
The biggest problem would be you'd have to convert the fleet very fast. And by the looks of our fleet, which is way too old, might be really a good time to be considering it, because if you could convert a third, a half of the fleet almost immediately, it might make a lot of sense. You'd save the money back. They're suggesting these trucks pay for themselves in the fuel in 10 years.
We would have to reflect it, though, in our budget, because, like I said, I've worked very hard to get the inventory down. It will change the inventory right over.
Correct.
Very strong committee put it together to get it done, because you're talking inter-school districts to do it.
Well, it sounds, if I'm hearing perhaps correctly, we might have two people who might be interested on the committee who are sitting around this table.
I think everybody at the table is interested because it's money.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Okay. No.
Okay.
Yes.
While you guys are throwing this back and forth, to buy the natural gas, or the propane bus, wouldn't there be grants from the federal government? Because you're keeping everything clean?
Well, NYSERDA, so state grants.
Yeah.
Yep, there are.
Well,
Not,
I went through the NYSERDA, they're more energy saving and stuff like that. And I'm just wondering if there's something further federally.
We can check and see.
Who's got the
Yeah.
big wallet?
Absolutely.
And then maybe you could get that $24,000 number down, and we'll never buy a Ford.
that would be nice.
All right, any other questions for Rose before she gets into her budget?
I have a couple more questions here. I don't know if I understood you correctly, but to have a private firm transfer the student was roughly, you said anywhere between $20,000 and $30,000?
Depending on the needs
Okay.
of the student.
Yeah, depending on the needs of the student. Do we have a cost per student that cost? You follow what I'm saying?
What do we pay per student?
You know what I mean? And does any kids walk to school? Or is it every? Do they?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean,
They are assigned a bus. If
Everybody-
they walk, it's their choice.
Okay, so every kid in this
District.
district
They are assigned a bus.
is that everywhere?
No. No.
I walked to school.
Yep.
My children did too.
We looked at that last.
Yeah, you want to talk about it?
No, you,
Well, I might defer to you because I had just come in. Last spring, that was one of the topics during the budget season, if you recall. And so we had a radius of a certain amount of, I don't
and
remember.
it went to like the Zittle's house.
Right, and so that radius is we start to take a look at safety zones. So across the street from us on Schoolview versus Jennings or versus Main Street. And at the time, what was decided was to put that on hold from last year. What they did do was to work very hard on the second run, because the second run was a number of at least 300 miles a day, if I recall. So it was well worth $12,000 to us, that second run. We kept the Tuesday and the Thursday. But that did come up. Would you like to add anything to that?
I actually would.
Okay.
Not from that perspective of before I was here, but just in terms of to add complications to it as well. So even though every child may be assigned a bus, the state will give us aid on children if they're so far away. So it's like a half mile, mile and a half, depending on if it's elementary, middle school.
Right.
So,
The non-decimal pupil ratio is any child within a mile and a half from the school, we do not get state aid on that child's transportation.
we can always transport them, we
Right.
get no aid on them.
So every bus that I have routed has to have a stop outside of a mile and a half so that that bus gets state aid. If I have a bus within a mile and a half loading, there's no state aid on that bus. So routing, I have to really think about where the children are that I'm putting on a bus to make sure we get the most we can from New York State.
Don, you have more questions?
I got one more question. Okay. This is tied to extracurricular activity, okay? When we have kids, and I don't care what it is, I don't even know what we do extracurricular, okay? Does busing kids to a different school for something, sports or whatever, does that come out of your budget, or does it come out of the
It depends.
Uh-huh.
other budget?
It depends.
Like athletics?
Transportation, anything transportation is me.
Okay, so in other words,
Athletics gets charged for the cost of the buses, like they would get billed
right,
back.
in other words, that's what I'm trying to get at.
Yes.
Is
Oh,
part of-
okay.
That's what
It's
figured.
part
It
of
is
her
part of her
budget.
budget. That's where I assumed you were
And
going with that.
the PTA helps facilitate food, field trips also for the
That-
children.
That's the other thing, I was wondering, field trips, you know.
Yeah, there is, it
Field
depends
trips
on
at
the
the
group.
elementary
Are all
and
PTA.
GLP are reimbursed by the PTA. Only at elementary and GLP, not at the high school level. So we do get some revenue from that. All right, so let's go in with the budget and.
Okay. You okay?
Yeah, great.
Okay.
I tell you what, though, it doesn't make sense to me, one iota, that if you don't spend the money, they're not going to give you more.
That's how it is.
That shit doesn't make sense. It's insanity. It should be, who needs the money?
But you have to prove.
I agree.
In order to spend, that shows the need. That's how they look at it.
Okay, then how come Buffalo gets reimbursed, the city of Buffalo gets reimbursed a heck of a lot more than a town like Williamsburg or Eden?
Well, because now you're talking about, it's tied into free and reduced population and the needs of the districts. Buffalo has a much higher percentage of free and reduced population, and I don't want to assume everyone knows what free and reduced is. That is for the lunch program and how many people, how many of the students are not paying the full price, or either getting a reduced lunch or they're getting a free lunch. And our district is roughly around the 20% range. Williamsville is less than that. Buffalo is much higher than that. So the state looks at that and says, okay, the economic need in Buffalo is much greater because they have more kids who need the free and reduced lunch, and so therefore they get a greater percentage of aid. So more of Buffalo's budget is based on state aid than Williamsville's budget is based on state aid. Very little of Williamsville's budget is based on state aid.
But when you do capital improvements, the numbers are...
That's a little bit different formula, so.
But a bus,
And Buffalo doesn't have a bus.
no, it just doesn't,
Correct.
make
Yeah.
sense to me. I mean,
Yep.
okay, you didn't buy buses, so we're going to penalize you. Well, we couldn't afford the damn things.
I agree. Mr. Minicom?
I'm wondering if there's, I see a line in it for $65,000 for equipment contract and repair. I was wondering if that I know there's normal maintenance like light bulbs and
We're-
washing and all the things like that.
What,
We're going to get there.
we will.
Yeah, we're
we'll get
getting
there.
there.
All right, I thought we did this one earlier.
No, this is
Nope.
her budget right here. She's just getting in.
I just changed over, sorry.
Yep. So let's even take a look at this because a lot of this you have never seen before. So to give you a brief description, what you're seeing under account is just a general account. When you see the A, that's a general fund. We have several different funds. We have a school lunch fund. We have a capital fund. We have the general fund, which is where most of our budget's in. So all these presentations are going to deal with the general fund, which is the A. 5510, 5530, that's telling you what department we're actually looking at, and in this case, this is
That's
transportation. The next three numbers, 200, 422, 423, that's telling you the type of expense, whether it's equipment, whether it's supplies, that sort of thing. The 00, that's telling you the location. 00 is, and I know we went over this last time, but just for review, 00 is district, 01 is junior, senior high school, 02 is elementary, 04 is GLP. And finally, the last four numbers are if they're attached to a specific program, like art or music. What you'll see in hers, there's no specific program. There's 000s, which is just general. Then you're going to see the description of what the expense is for, the line, and then the description under that line. And then we did a budget and expense for the past couple of years. And obviously, when you take a look at the 13-14 expense, we're still in the year, so you can't really look at that with any certainty because the year's not over with. But you'll see the budget for 12-13 and 13-14 and what we spent in 12-13, and then what she's proposing for 14-15. Okay? Go ahead.
Okay. For the shop, they're in need of a sandblasting cabinet, plasma cutter, and a laptop for the shop. We need to purchase a new one. For when the vehicles, we have multiple computer systems that run a bus, and in order to, when they send out a code, right now we're having to send that bus out to be read. If we get a newer laptop with the program, our mechanics will be able to do it in-house. That will alleviate some of the expenditure when we have to take it out to a shop to have it professionally read for the codes and also have them cleared before DOT. Insurance is pretty much set. We don't have much say-so over that. Bus driver certification, I have lowered the expense there. More and more of the training when I came in, BOCES did much of the training for our drivers. They have to have two-hour refreshers a year, plus there's basic courses that they have that is mandated by New York State, plus pre-services. And I do most of that in-house, being that I am a state instructor. So that has saved us a considerable amount of money. Parts and supplies, this, I did raise it a little bit because of an aging fleet. I don't want to raise it a lot, but in reality, with the age of the fleet, just like your car, the nickel and dimes become more and more expensive the older our vehicles get. So I just want to be prepared there. Gasoline, we don't know what's going to go on in the Middle East, so we're trying to be prepared. I know they were in the news a lot this weekend. Same with oils and lubricants. It's all based on that crude oil and whatever goes on over there. Tubes and tires, same thing. They're based on the crude oil prices and the expenditures. I do pride ourselves on having excellent winter tires on our buses. And this year has been a blessing.
Absolutely.
And the biggest problems we've had in these snowstorms, other than my drivers white knuckling because they can't see where they are, we've had the public out there getting stuck in front of us on hills and we can't get around them. These mechanics have put excellent traction on our vehicles for the purposes that we need, and it is keeping our children safe. Some of our tires that they took off still have some use, and they'll be put back on in the spring. But for right now, we have excellent brand-new tires on our vehicles.
You know, Rose, I know this isn't part of the budget on the tires, but when we had that really, really cold weather and the traffic bans, you and Dan came in and all the buses started up, which I thought also
Yeah.
showed
Yeah.
that
I
the
came in, yeah.
maintenance was really being kept
Yeah,
up to
I
speed.
came in that day when the ban was lifted. I came in at noon, and I started all the vehicles. And I was able to do it, facilitate it by myself. So that shows that our mechanics are right on ball and taking good care of us.
And what I'm going to ask here, everyone was emailed this presentation, so you all have it.
Do you want to
With-
speed through this?
Just, right, so give us
Okay.
some of the big highlights of some of the changes, that sort of thing. We want to make sure we give some time for
Just
Marissa as
the-
well.
The biggest
And
thing
questions.
is the diminishing of my need for training for my drivers, because I'm taking care of that. Parts up, fuel up, anything associated with crude oil, safety clean, that's a solvent. I don't know, does anybody see anything that sticks out? What would that be?
Insurance went up 10%.
Yeah, Then
we-
that's
we don't have
given
any-
to us from the insurance company.
Yeah,
So,
we
yep.
have no say in that.
Guess why?
Do we have a choice on insurance?
Yeah, do you get to shop around on insurance or no?
We do actually shop around insurance companies, absolutely.
Who do we use?
Our agent is Walsh Insurance out of Hamburg.
And where else have we used them?
I know they've looked around before, and I will tell you, this is a topic of conversation we frequently have amongst all the business officials, and this is something that is looked at by everyone, and when we compare rates, our rates are actually pretty good.
Do you know who the insurance carrier actually is, though?
Yes, Utica National.
Oh, okay.
Utica National.
Just from personal experience, sometimes, because it just happened to me, because I use Walsh personally, you call Utica and talk with them, you're going to get a lower price if you go directly to the company.
If you go individually.
You may.
Our needs are so big and there are so many complexities with everything that goes on. When we have student accidents that happen or any accidents, if we didn't have an agent doing that for us, we would be in major trouble. So I would definitely not recommend in that case of going direct.
Well, maybe just pricing-wise.
We could check into that, but I don't know if you can get the price direct and then still have an
When you
agent
start
tied.
doing that, is
It's all
they'll
part
know
of
over
it.
something you're not even sure of, and then when you have an accident, they're like, well,
Okay.
you called and then you want it lower, so we took this out, and you agreed to it, and you didn't even
Okay.
realize what you agreed to.
But I will be sitting,
that.
but I will be sitting down with them again this year to review the entire policy to see if we can save anywhere as well. So we have annual meetings on that. Mr.
And,
Minka?
and also, I met with Dan Ricotta, our head mechanic, and with an aging fleet, just so you kind of understand what I'm looking at when I'm looking at my parts line as well as equipment, contract, and repairs, because that reflects when I have to send a vehicle out to have it repaired, it will fall under that line. An engine, and this is without labor, an engine, you're looking at $17,800. That's just in replacement. A transmission, $2,500 is an estimate. And that, again, that's no labor attached to it and none of the other parts that would be needed. So that's kind of why I've put some money in here just in case we need it because of our fleet aging.
Rose, let me ask you, now, I apologize for being late, but did I miss something? Were we going to bring some buses in?
We're going to talk about that at our board meeting tonight. What she's referring to is that while we are disposing of some buses that are past their life expectancy, we have had a company who is loaning us buses at no cost to the district and no obligation to the district, in the hope that we're going to go out to a bus proposition, not that we're obligated to them in any way, shape, or form.
So are we going to need all these parts is where I'm going?
We still have
might.
a very old fleet, even with the 2 new buses, so yeah.
And we're so far behind rotation, getting two 66 passengers and 2 smaller, like 16 or 20 passenger, that still does not facilitate spares for us because we're still behind the 8 ball.
Mr. Minicum, you have a question?
I was wondering if there's any kind of number on what your average annual repair per bus is, over the life of the bus. We're going to keep a bus 13 years. On an average, there's probably $1,000 or $5,000 in repairs to that bus. I'm wondering if that It'd be a very easy way to
Budget.
figure out your numbers. But, if you replace an engine on a bus or replace a floor, it's going to throw things all over. We find we're doing a lot of engine replacements. Again, we get down to the
Right.
fuel
And we,
type of engine.
right, and we haven't yet.
Okay. so-
Okay, but I'm just anticipating it because we're infringing on 11 and 12-year-old vehicles. So I have to think ahead if it happens.
Diesel?
No. The large buses, the 66 passenger are, the smaller ones are gas.
Okay, because the diesel should last for a couple $100,000.
Oh, yes. Well, it depends. Depends.
Do you know what the cost per month difference between the 66 and the 16 to 20 is?
The cost, I can look into it.
It's she's got it up there. Not this sheet, another sheet.
In that first presentation.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So since we have just about a few more minutes, any other highlights from this? I know you all have had it. I don't know if everyone's had a chance to look at it fully. But any other highlights you want to point out, or any other anything else on page? Why don't you go to page? You're on page 2 now. Anything from here specifically, or the next page that you want to highlight? Okay. Any other questions? I know that's a lot, and again, that's part of, as we're going through this, it's a lot of information in here. So as you're looking through this material, when you go home tonight, next couple days, if you have questions, look at them, email me, I'll forward them to Rose, have her answer them, because I know not everyone's going to be able to get all their questions in right now, or think of everything they want to ask now, and we will get back to you. Okay?
Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. It's nice meeting you.
Okay. Next up, we have Marissa Felicaro.
Is hers on here? No.
No, mine is not. I printed mine out.
Yours is on there too, if you want to pull it up.
Okay.
It's up to you. But if you print it out, that's fine.
I did.
Okay.
Printed out hard copies if anybody didn't print out and
Yeah, that's
like
even
'em.
easier for them.
Sure. I think I have. And just so you know, I was struggling with the color printer, so the copying is just a little weird on that. I think I have enough. Okay, hi, I'm Marissa Felicaro. I'm the athletic director here. If you look at this paper right here, this is basically a presentation that I did to the Board of Education last year, but I figured since we had so many new board members and a lot of new people that weren't at budget meetings last year, that I would just give them a basic overview of what athletics in Eden is. And you can take the part and read it later on, but basically the important parts were that athletics in Eden is composed of 58 teams. 12 are modified, 2 of those are not funded by the district, 19 of them are JV, and 27 are varsity. Last year, we had 907 athletes that participated in athletics, 401 in the fall, 196 in winter, and 310 in the spring. This year in the fall, I can tell you that it was roughly around 380 kids that participated, 380 to 390, I'm not sure of my complete number yet. And we don't have the winter counts in yet. Okay, last year, 24 out of our 27 teams earned Scholar Athlete. 2 years ago, we had 20 athletes that went on in the graduating class, which was 137. 20 of them went on to play college. Last year's graduating class had 18 that went on to play some form of college athletics. And if you flip it over, basically the levels that we offer in Eden, a varsity team is primarily composed of 11th and 12th graders. JV athlete is primarily 9th and 12th, or 9th and 10th graders, and the modified athlete is the 7th and 8th graders. If you go to the next page, Mr. Murphy had basically asked me to give a breakdown of the cuts that have gone through the athletic program throughout the years. So I was not here in 2005, I was teaching, so I went through a couple of the files, and that was basically the first year that it looked like athletics had taken the biggest hit as far as money-wise. Everything before then seemed like it was running status quo. So I just gave you a breakdown since 2005 and 2006. The biggest one that happened and then was the supply line. Any supplies that were purchased by the district, they used to have a budget of $30,000 to spend on all of the 58 sports, 58 teams. That year, it was cut down to $17,000. Every year since then, it's been cut down between $500 and $2,000. The current supply budget that we are working with is $13,708. A reconditioning line, which, so you know, a reconditioning line is for helmets.
So just to clarify,
Yep.
2005, 2006, when you say the old, that's from 2005 and 2006?
Yes,
And then when you say new, that's from?
Now.
That's now, yes.
2013.
2013, 2014. The current money that I had to spend this year was $13,708.
7 years difference.
Yes. In one year, it might have stayed status quo, but it was $30,000 in 2005, 2006, and now it's $13,708. The reconditioning line, which, so you know, all football helmets and lacrosse helmets have to be reconditioned and approved by the state every year. We have to pay to send them out. The state approves them. They check them, check the padding on them and everything. They send them back. We have to do that every year. If they fail, we need to purchase new ones. This year I have 30 of them that failed. The reconditioning line previously in 2005 was $10,000. The current one that I'm working with is $3,500. So basically, the $3,500 pays for the reconditioning because somebody's making money by testing them. The purchasing of new helmets is coming out of that supply line, just to give you a little back history. The following year, 2007, 2008, we used to have an awards line where varsity modified JV athletes would all get their trophy if they were coach's award or MVP. It used to be $5,000 for the previous years. That has been cut to zero, and it has been ever since then. If you flip over. 2009, 2010, there used to be a uniform line, which was $10,000. So the previous AD would basically replenish about 2 to 3 teams their uniforms a year. Uniforms for a team cost anywhere between $2,500 and $4,500. So we would take that $10,000 and replenish usually three sets of uniforms a year. That uniform line was cut completely from the budget. The current uniform line since then is zero. How we get uniforms, if you're asking yourself that, is we use old ones, coaches fundraise for them, or we ask the Booster Club to help us with donations for uniforms. Coaches, ADs, used to attend clinics, staff development conferences. That originally was $4,000. It was cut to zero in 2009 and has been ever since. In 2010, actually 2011, right at the mid-year mark, our previous administrator was Doug Beto. He was the athletic director. He was an administrator. When he left, they replaced them with me. And I am actually a teacher on special assignment. So you lost an administrator, and there's his salary and there's my salary.
And you're also not full-time.
I am not full-time, so that's actually not correct totally because I'm teaching part-time too. So there was a bigger savings to the district than just what is showed. They also cut athletic security at contests. That budget line was $17,000. We used to have paid supervision at every contest that we had here. They would walk around, they would make sure the building was safe, the coaches were safe, the fans were very good spectators. That line was cut to $9,000. And we currently use volunteer reserve police officers to help us in the games that I view as possible problem games, to have them there. The next year, 2012, 2013, we did cut the JV fall cheerleading coach out completely. She is now funded by the Booster Club. And it's a volunteer position, basically. We also cut all non-league modified contests and scrimmages. So where Don asked earlier, where does the transportation to sporting events comes from? It comes from the athletic budget. So the modified, we reduced it by roughly about $8,000, cutting one referee home contest and a trip out. We cut that part of the transportation. So the modified teams only play league contests right now. Last year, I would say, was probably the biggest hit to athletics. We did cut the athletic run, which was the 5 o'clock athletic run. That was roughly around a $22,000 savings. We also cut non-league contests, scrimmages, tournaments for JV and varsity sports out completely. That was a $21,000 savings to the district. Currently, because a varsity contest needs more than just its league competitions, parents are driving their kids, or the boosters, coaches are fundraising and paying but paying for transportation separately so that we can still compete. And it's, depending on the team, it's anywhere from 4 to 8 contests that are not funded. So over those years, it's roughly about a $122,000 savings, cuts to athletics through those years.
Have you put together a budget, what you would like to see?
I always have my wish list going. My budget is due in 2 weeks. I am trying to keep it around last year's budget. I understand the times that we are going through. I would love to have non-league contests back, as it was very hard this year to do that, but I'm understanding that that's probably not something that the district can do right now. My major wish list would be to fund modified lacrosse, if I had my choice.
Can you elaborate on that? Because I was just going to ask you, you have one team that is funded by the Booster Club completely.
I have technically 2 teams, the modified boys lacrosse and the modified girls lacrosse. It roughly costs the Booster Club, I think it's going to be $10,500 this year, and it covers the cost of the coach, the cost of officials for home games, the cost of transportation to away games, and I don't buy them uniforms. They use the old uniforms, and they really use the hand-me-down equipment. So that's those 3 things. I believe the Booster Club has been paying for this for, I think it's going on 6 years, I've been told. They've done a great job with it. So out of all my wish lists, this is the major one. The Booster Club has given us a lot of things this year, especially. So in my wish list, I will be asking for that and one other small thing that will be coming up.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on why it's so important to you?
Just because the amount of kids that are involved in it. Right now, the boys team had, I think it was 23 kids last year. The girls team had 18, and that's over 40 kids just about that are not going home and doing nothing after school. They're being active. They're not just walking around getting into trouble. They're playing a sport. They're dedicating. Lacrosse has a wonderful summer program.
It's a scholar athlete team.
The lacrosse varsity team is a scholar athlete team. The coaches are working hard, and I think they've deserved to be up there with the rest of us as far as funded by the district.
Were you saying boys and girls, or just boys?
Both.
How does the Booster Club generate the revenue? I don't know.
Oh, no, you're fine. Honestly, it's mostly by fundraising by the coaches.
You can elaborate. I mean, they sell
Well,
candy bars.
Oh, my gosh,
They came around to our store and asked for donations.
Yep.
They go out,
We ask for donations, we sell wreaths, we do the Cornfest parking lot. It depends on the sport. The Booster Club is growing right now. We have a wonderful new president and a couple of wonderful new members that are starting. We did, it's not a beer blast, it's a party. I'll say an after sports party. We tried doing that. They're limited on the things that they can do because they're still affiliated with the school district, but it's basically if there's a team that needs new uniforms, the coach goes to the Booster Club and says, I need some money, how can you help me? And they'll give you some ideas for a fundraiser, and then the coach has to organize it with the Booster Club's help, because there's certain things, the school district, I can't say I want to run a 50-50 club at wrestling. It's illegal to gamble in a school, but a booster club could help me with some out-of-school activities. Mattress sales are big. Unfortunately, you could come down to going to some of the same businesses a lot, of asking for donations a lot of times, or the same families that are continually paying for uniforms and stuff like
And
that.
and
But-
Marissa, what I'm going to do, I know we had one more question for Mr. Minicon. We still have to break down before the board meeting at 7, so I want to make sure we get that in.
How much, do you know how much dollars the Booster Club contributes to athletic program?
This year was a very expensive year. They just put in a brand-new scoreboard that's valued. Without the scoreboard, between all the teams, it's not Booster Club money that only Booster Club generated. The only money that they generated by themselves would be the lacrosse money, and roughly $20,000 on their own. But all the coaches with uniforms and everything, there's around, I would say, 50,000 that goes in and out.
But it's from
Booster Club solely, through the Booster Club, that's around 50. Okay? But that is with the work of the coaches, the student athletes, the parents that are involved in each team.
outside the budget.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Especially this year because the non-league contests were cut. So a lot more money was generated this year.
Okay, and on that, I just want to make sure we get a chance to wrap it up and have a breakdown before the board meeting starts. So thank you very much. If anyone has other questions, I'm sure you do, email them, let us know.
It's estimated, last year was 10,000, I would say for both of them. I would say with the officials' fees going up, it's probably about 10,500.
Okay.
Now, what about the cheerleading coach?
The cheerleading coach is done basically by the cheerleaders fundraise for it, and then it's reimbursed through boosters.
Yeah, I know, but the JV coach, what would her salary?
Her salary would be JV, I believe it's 2,800, maybe 3,100, which is something else that is on. The boosters, yeah, it basically, because the boosters can't play a sole person, they basically write a check in donation for her services.
Yeah.
Because she is board approved, she is fingerprinted, she does everything, she practices with our kids, she instructs our kids, but it was cut 2 years ago. So instead of cutting those kids, our program is, we have about 40 cheerleaders in there. JV's to about 20. So.
Okay, thank you very much.